I'm Mr. Monty, and this is lesson 12 in our 2020 series. 20 lessons of 20 minutes a day for 20 days in preparation for the placement test here at the community colleges in Spokane. The last time we were focusing on solving, and factoring an equation using the quadratic formula. So, a couple of things. We couldn't factor it using our techniques that we learned in the past. We know that we can always use the quadratic formula because it works on every equation. We know that we have to get our expression, our equation, in the standard form where it's equal to 0. And the reason we do all this is because we're trying to find what's called the zeros. The values that make this equation 0, so we can solve some sort of real world problem, context problem. And it also allows us to graphically represent the final resulting curve. Well, let's get started today. The first thing we see is we're not in the correct form. We've got to get this set equal to 0. So step 1, let's subtract a 3 from both sides. Minus 2x squared minus 3x plus 1 equals 0. So step 1, we set it equal to 0. So we have the correct standard form in order to use the quadratic formula. Step 2, let's make sure that we have the correct values for A, B, and C. Always use those signs. A equals minus 2, B equals minus 3, C equals positive 1. This might be a step that you don't want to do. I'm in a hurry. I don't want to take the time. But I'm telling you that in order to avoid those mistakes with the pluses and minuses, this is an important thing to do, especially if you have a different colored pen or pencil so that it stands out. Okay, let's actually write the quadratic formula. X equals minus B minus a minus 3, and I always do this because this is one of those spots where a minus and a minus, plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4a minus 2c plus 1 all over 2a minus 2. So you can already see we got minuses all over the page. Let's try to make sure that we don't make a mistake. One step at a time. Minus a minus 3. Well, this is like a multiplication. Minus times a minus is a positive. So I'm going to write plus 3, plus or minus. Okay. Now, most people use a TI-83 or a TI-84. And if you do, there's a little pitfall. If you actually do the keystroke minus 3 squared, the TI-83 and the TI-84 say minus 9. That's not correct. Remember, what this means is minus 3 times minus 3. Yep. I'm going to write that off to the side here. Minus 3 times a minus 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Minus times a minus is a positive. Okay. So, minus 3 squared is 9. Now, I do it this way. I see that minus times a minus. What's minus times a minus? It's a positive. Now I do the numbers. 4 times 2 times 1. 2 times 1 is 2, times 4 is 8. All over 2 times minus 2, which is a minus 4. Nine plus 8, 17. All over a minus 4. Now, I think back in the previous tutorial what we did. I don't have a calculator, and I've got to know what the square root of 17 is for graphing purposes. Well, I go over here and I know that the square root of 16 is 4. Square root of 25 is 5. Well, 17 is really close to 16, so I'm going to round it to 4.1 for this problem. Okay, we finally got it down in a usable form. Now let's find our x1 and x2. x1 is the positive 3 plus the 4.1 all over 4. x2 equals positive 3 minus 4.1 all over 4. Bring them across. We're going to have 7.1 over 4 and that's a minus, isn't it? A minus 1.1 all over 4. Now it would really be handy if we had a calculator here. But we could say, do this off the top, 1.75. Yep, let's try 1.75. And 4 goes into this 2, 7, 0.7. Yeah, 0.7. That's a little bit more difficult, isn't it? If it was 12, it would go in there 0.3 times. So it'd be 0.275. Yep. And it's negative. Very good. Thank you. Okay. So now let's write the actual final answer in factored form. We knew that these are the solutions that make it 0. So the first one will be x minus 1.75, x plus 0.275. Good, because if we set this equal to 0, this one would take, this takes a positive 1.75, which is what we got, and this one takes a negative 0.275. Good, they're the opposites. Now, let's actually put this on a grid just so we can see it. Make sure we remember why we want to factor an equation like this, a quadratic. Okay, so let's see, 1, 2, positive 1.75. 1, 2, this is a small one right here, at minus, what's our y-intercept? 3. 1, 2, 3. Wow, this is quite the shape, isn't it? So now we have 3 points and we need to connect them. Well, my initial thought is some sort of a frowny face, but that makes sense. Minus x squared is a frowny face. So our final shape is going to be something like this. Awesome. So, lesson 12, I can factor the equation using the quadratic formula. We did that. And then we went one step further so that we made sure that we understood why we went through all this math. The thing to take away is make sure you write out the steps with those pluses and minuses to avoid those traps. And if you're using a TI-83 or a TI-84, remember, if you just hit the keystroke minus 3 squared, you don't get the right answer. Make sure you use your brackets to ensure that you're accurate. This completes lesson 12. We'll see you next time for lesson 13.